that 61 years ago tonight, history was made in this very spot. This very spot. Allen Ginsberg, 30 years old at the time, for the first time read the complete text of Howl, which turned our society upside down. Allen Ginsberg. Was anyone here 61 years ago? No? Well, I mean, you were here, but not here. Anyone in this spot? No, okay. But as we know, that was in the late 50s, in the McCarthy era, in the HUAC era, in the what? The Drama Guild. Berkeley ran the Town Hall Theater here in the 50s, which was an edgy theater spot. Later tonight, I think, if we're lucky, Jennifer Stone, who performed here, will grace us with her presence, and during the schmooze time you can hear a little bit about that Town Hall Theater. And there was a bowling alley in the spot in the same building, just the other side, and the crash of the bowling balls were going on during this poetry reading, but they didn't give a damn. And a lot of luminaries were here that night. Now, like I say, it was the age of the McCarthyism, the atomic test, the silent generation. I came a year after that. That was 1956. I came to Berkeley in 1957. I just missed that. And came to Holy Hill to study theology, and we were studying all the Old Testament prophets during the daytime, but at nighttime we were studying, sitting at the feet of the contemporary poets in North Beach and all over the Bay Area. It was a wild scene in the 50s, and it was setting the stage for so much that followed thereafter. As we know, a few things. The HUAC City Hall protest. Anyone there for that? All right, all right. The Mississippi Freedom Summit, or anyone go to that in '67? Whoa, all right. Free speech protest, of course. Summer of Love, which is being celebrated right now. All that started right here in this space. Really, really. Ginsberg howling, it turned literature and poetry and protest. It opened our heads so magnificently. And after that, the Vietnam protests, the occupation of Alcatraz, the divestment campaigns, Occupy, Black Lives Matter, all of that. It might have happened without what happened here. It might have, but he kicked it off. He opened our heads so magnificently that we can never look backwards. So there was that. What else? Oh, Ferlighetti. When I came in '57, the trial celebrating tonight, the repressive, conformist, racist, homophobic world of the 50s cried out for it. We're still crying out for it. Aren't we? It's as contemporary as ever tonight. And especially since January, you know. Jesus Christ! I remember going to a reading at the Cellar in North Beach, where Ferlighetti read a poem called "The Dinner for the to organize the impeachment of President Eisenhower." That was in 1958. Maybe we could. He's still with us. Maybe we could get him to do a poem for the impeachment of number 45. Do you think? All right. But on March 18th, 1956, not only was Howl read for the very first time here, that was a monumental historical thing. But 3 other Ginsberg poems were read that night for the very first time, right here in this spot. Here, and by the way, this is a portrait of Allen Ginsberg up here, done by Ariel Parkinson, next door neighbor of Ginsberg over there on Milvia Street. Because he finished the poem Howl here in Berkeley, working at the Med and on Milvia Street. And so 2 other sections that were read for the first time here will be read tonight, plus 3 other poems that we're going to hit you with here in just a minute. One of them is a cottage in a strange new cottage in Berkeley. the Sunflower Sutra, and America. So that's going to warm us up for the group reading of Howl. We hope that you all have your sections, you got your hymnals, you got your sections ready, and you're going to be ready to come up to the mic without any hesitation. So cue yourself with look at the section before you, so you'll be ready to come up. Now, I'm going to begin with a small cottage, strange new cottage in Berkeley. All afternoon, cutting bramble blackberries off a tottering brown fence, under a low branch with its rotten old apricots, miscellaneous under the leaves, fixing the drip in the intricate gut machinery of a new toilet. Found a good coffee pot in the vines by the porch, rolled a big tire out of the scarlet bushes, hid my marijuana, wet the flowers, playing the sunlit water each to each, returning for godly extra drops for the string beans and daisies. 3 times walked around the grass and sighed absently. My reward, when the garden fed me its plums from the form of a small tree in the corner, an angel, thoughtful of my stomach and my dry and forlorn tongue. Now, see? He howled, but he also was sweet. He was a real witch. Okay, now Sunflower Sutra by Howl Hughes.
I walked on the banks of the tin can banana dock and sat down under the huge shade of a Southern Pacific locomotive to look at the sunset over the box house hills and cry. Jack Kerouac sat beside me on a busted, rusty iron pole companion. We thought the same thoughts of the soul, bleak and blue and sad-eyed, surrounded by the gnarled steel roots of trees of machinery. The oily water on the river mirrored the red sky. Sun sank on top of final Frisco peaks. No fish in that stream, no hermit in those mounts, just ourselves. Ruby-eyed and hungover like old bums on the riverbank, tired and wily. "Look at the sunflower," he said. There was a dead gray shadow against the sky, big as a man, sitting dry on top of a pile of ancient sawdust. I rushed up, enchanted. It was my first sunflower. Memories of Blake, my visions, Harlem, and hells of the East Rivers, bridges clanking, Joe's greasy sandwiches, dead baby carriages, black treadless tires, forgotten and unretreaded, the poem of the riverbank, condoms and pots, steel knives, nothing stainless, only the dank muck and the razor-sharp artifacts passing into the past. And the gray sunflower poised against the sunset, crackly, bleak and dusty with the smut and smog and smoke of olden locomotives in its eye. Corolla of bleary spikes pushed down and broken like a battered crown. Seeds fallen out of its face, soon to be toothless mouth of sunny air, sun rays obliterated on its hairy head like a dried wire spiderweb. Leaves stuck out like arms out of the stem, gestures from the sawdust root, broke pieces of plaster fallen out of the black twigs, a dead fly in its ear. Unholy, battered old thing you were, my sunflower. Oh, my soul, I love you then. That grime was no man's grime, but death and human locomotives. All that dress of dust, that veil of darkened railroad skin, that smog of cheek, that eyelid of black misery, that sooty hand or phallus or protuberance of artificial, worse than dirt, industrial, modern, all that civilization spotting your crazy golden crown, and those blear thoughts of death and dusty loveless eyes and ends and withered roots below in the home pile of sand and sawdust, rubber dollar bills, skin of machinery, the guts and innards of the weeping, coughing car, the empty, lonely tin cans with their rusty tongues alack. What more could I name? The smoked ashes of some cock cigar, the cunts of wheelbarrows and the milky breasts of cars, worn out asses out of chairs and speakers of dynamos, all these entangled in your mummied roots. And you there, standing before me in the sunset, all your glory in your form, a perfect beauty of a sunflower, a perfect, excellent, lovely sunflower existence, a sweet natural eye to the new hip moon, woke up alive and excited, grasping the sunset shadow, sunrise golden monthly breeze. How many flies buzz round your innocent of your grime, while you curse the heavens of the railroad and your flower soul. Poor dead flower, when did you forget you were a flower? When did you look at your skin and decide you were an impotent, dirty old locomotive? The ghost of a locomotive, the specter and shade of a once powerful, mad American locomotive. You were never no locomotive, sunflower. You were a sunflower.
Yes.
And you, locomotive, you are a locomotive. Forget me not. So I grabbed up the skeleton thick sunflower and stuck it at my side like a scepter, and delivered my sermon to my soul, and Jack's soul too, and anyone who'll listen. We're not our skin of grime. We're not dread, bleak, dusty, imageless locomotives.
No.
We're golden sunflowers inside, blessed by our own seed and hairy, naked accomplishment bodies, growing into mad, black, formal sunflowers in the sunset, spied on by our own eyes under the shadow of the bad locomotive riverbank sunset Frisco hilly tin can evening sit-down vision.
Whoa.
All, and now I'm nothing. America, $2.27, January 17th, 1956. I can't stand my own mind. America, when will we end the human war? Go fuck yourself with your atom bomb. I don't feel good. Don't bother me. I won't write my poem until I'm in my right mind. America, when did you get so angelic? When will you take off your clothes? When will you look at yourself through the grave? When will you be worthy of your million Trotskyites? American, why are your libraries full of tears? America, when will you send your eggs to India? I'm sick of your insane demands. When can I go into the supermarket and buy what I need with my good looks? America, after all, it is you and I who are perfect, not the next world. Your machinery is too much for me. You make me want to be a saint. There must be some other way to settle this argument. Burns. Everybody, somebody goes on trial for murder. I haven't read the newspaper for months. Every day somebody goes on trial for murder. America, I feel sentimental about the Wobblies. America, I used to be a communist when I was a kid. I'm not sorry! I smoke marijuana every chance I get. I sit in my house for days and on end and stare at the roses in the closet. When I go to Chinatown, I get drunk and I never get laid. My mind is made up. There's going to be trouble. You should have seen me reading Marx. My psychoanalyst thinks I'm perfectly right. I won't say the Lord's Prayer. I have mystical visions and cosmic vibrations. America, I still haven't told you what you did to Uncle Max after he came over from Russia. I'm addressing you! Are you going to let your emotional life be run by Time magazine? I'm obsessed by Time magazine. Read it every week. Cover stares at me every time I slink past the corner candy store. I read it in the basement of the Berkeley Public Library. It's always telling me about responsibility. Businessmen are serious, movie producers are serious, everybody's serious but me. You know, it occurs to me that I am America. Oh, I'm talking to myself again. Asia is rising against me, and I haven't got a Chinaman's chance. I better consider my national resources. My national resources consist of 2 joints of marijuana, millions of genitals, and unpublishable private literature that jet planes 1,400 miles an hour, and 25,000 mental institutions. I say nothing about my prisons, nor the millions of underprivileged who live in my flower pots under the light of 500 suns. I have abolished the whorehouses of France. Tangiers is the next to go. My ambition is to be president, despite the fact that I'm Catholic. America, how can I write a holy litany in your silly mood? I need to repeat that. America, how can I write a holy litany in your silly mood? I will continue like Henry Ford. My strophes are as individual as his automobiles more, so they're all different sexes. America, I will sell you strophes, $2,500 a piece, $500 down on your old strophes. America, free Tommy Mooney. America, save the Spanish loyalists. America, Sacco and Vanzetti must not die. America, Sacco and Vanzetti must not die. Sacco! America, I am the Scottsboro Boys. America, when I was 7, Mama took me to communist cell meetings. They sold us garbanzos a handful per ticket. A ticket cost a nickel, and the speeches were free. Everybody was angelic and sentimental about the workers. It was all so sincere. You have no idea what a good thing the party was in 1835. Scott Nearing was a grand old man, a real mensch. Mother Boar, the silk strikers, Weeblich made me cry. I once saw the Yiddish orator Israel Amter plain. Everybody must have been a spy. America, you really don't want to go to war. America, it's them bad Russians. Them Russians, and them Chinaman, them Russians, and them Chinaman, them Russians, and them Chinaman, and them Russians, yes, the Russians wants to eat us alive. The Russians power mad. She wants to take our cars from out our garages. Her wants to grab Chicago. Her needs a Red Reader's Digest. Her wants are auto plants in Siberia. Oh, him big bureaucracy running our filling stations. That no good. Him make Indians learn read. Him need big black niggers. Her make us all work 16 hours a day. Help America. This is quite serious. America, this is the impression I get from looking at the television set. America, is this correct? America, is this correct? America, is this correct? Christ, I'd better get right down to the job. It's true, I don't want to join the army or turn lathes in precision parts factories. I'm nearsighted and psychopathic anyway. America, I'm putting my queer shoulder to the wheel.
Storefront burrows of tea-head joyride, neon blinking traffic light, sun and moon and tree vibrations in the roaring winter dusts of Brooklyn, ash can rantings and kind king light of mind. Who chained themselves to subways for the endless ride from Battery to Holy Bronx on Benzedrine, until the noise of wheels and children brought them down shuddering, mouth-racked and battered bleak of brain, all drained of brilliance, in the drear light of Zoo, who sank all night in submarine light of Bixfors, floated out and sat through the stale beer afternoon in desolate Fugazi's, listening to the crack of doom on the hydrogen jukebox, who talked continuously 70 hours from park to pad to bar, to Bellevue Museum, to the Brooklyn Bridge, a lost battalion of platonic conversationalists jumping down the stoops, off fire escapes, off windowsills, off Empire State, out of the moon, yakety yakety, screaming, vomiting, whispering facts and memories and anecdotes and eyeball kicks and shocks of hospitals and jails and wars, whose intellects disgorged in total recall for 7 days and nights with brilliant eyes, meet for the synagogue, cast on the pavement.
Because of railroads in Kansas, who vanished into nowhere in Zen, New Jersey, leaving a trail of ambiguous picture postcards of Atlantic City Hall, suffering eastern sweats and Tangerian bone grindings and migraines of China under junk withdrawal in Newark's bleak furnished room, who wandered around and around at midnight in the railroad yard, wondering where to go, and went, leaving no broken hearts, who lit cigarettes in boxcars, racketing through snow toward lonesome farms and grandfather night, who studied Plotinus, Poe, St. John of the Cross, telepathy, and Bach Kabbalah because the cosmos instinctively vibrated at their feet in Kansas, who loaned it through the streets of Idaho seeking visionary Indian angels, who were visionary Indian angels, who thought they were only mad when Baltimore gleamed in supernatural ecstasy.
Who jumped in limousines with the Chinamen of Oklahoma on the impulse of winter midnight street light. This will definitely help. Small town rain, who lounged hungry and lonesome through Houston, seeking jazz or sex or soup, and followed the brilliant Spaniard to converse about America, an eternity, a hopeless task, and so took ship to Africa, who disappeared into the volcanoes of Mexico, leaving behind nothing but the shadow of dungarees and the lava and ash of poetry scattered in fireplace Chicago, who reappeared on the West Coast investigating the FBI in beards and shorts with big pacifist eyes, sexy in their dark skin, passing out incomprehensible leaflets, who burned cigarette holes in their arms, protesting the narcotic tobacco haze of capitalism, who distributed super communist pamphlets on Union Square,
weeping and undressing while the sirens of Los Alamos wailed down and wailed down Wall, and the Staten Island ferry also wailed.
Gymnasiums naked and trembling before the machinery of other skeletons, who bit detectives in the neck and shrieked with delight in police cars for committing no crime but their own wild cooking, pederasty, and intoxication, who howled on their knees in the subway and were dragged off the roof waving genitals and manuscripts, who let themselves be fucked in the ass by saintly motorcyclists and screamed with joy, who blew and were blown by those human seraphim, the sailors, caresses of Atlantic and Caribbean love, who bawled in the morning and the evenings in rose gardens and the grass of public parks and cemeteries, scattering their semen freely to whomever come who may, who hiccuped endlessly trying to giggle but wound up with a sob behind a partition in a Turkish bath when the blind and naked angel came to pierce them with a sword, who lost their love boys to the three old shrews of fate, the one-eyed shrew, the heterosexual dollar, and the one-eyed shrew that winks out of the womb, and the one-eyed shrew that does nothing but sit on her ass and snip the intellectual golden threads of the craftsman's loom.
Who copulated, ecstatic and insatiate, with a bottle of beer, a sweetheart, a package of cigarettes, a candle, and fell off the bed and continued along the floor and down the hall and ended fainting on the wall with a vision of ultimate content come, eluding the last schism of consciousness, who sweetened the snatches of a million girls trembling in the sunset and were red-eyed in the morning, but prepared to sweeten the snatch of the sunrise, flashing buttocks under barns and naked in the lake. Who went out whoring through Colorado in myriad stolen night cars. N.C., secret hero of these poems, Coxman and Adonis of Denver, joy to the memory of his innumerable lays of girls in empty lots and diner backyards, movie houses, rickety rows, on mountaintops in caves, or with gaunt waitresses in familiar roadside, lonely petticoat upliftings, and especially secret gas station solipsisms of John's and hometown alleys too.
Yes, yes.
Who faded out in vast sordid movies, were shifted in dreams, woke on a sudden Manhattan, and picked themselves out of basements hung over with heartless tokay and horrors of Third Avenue iron dreams, and stumbled to unemployment offices. Who walked all night with their shoes full of blood on the snowbank docks, waiting for a door in the East River to open to a room full of steam heat and opium. Who created great suicidal dramas on the apartment cliff banks of the Hudson, under the wartime blur floodlight of the moon, and their heads shall be crowned with laurel in oblivion. Who ate the lamb stew of the imagination, or digested the crab at the muddy bottom of the rivers of Bowery. Who wept at the romance of the streets with their pushcarts full of onions and bad music. Who sat in boxes, breathing in the darkness under the bridge, and rose up to build harpsichords in their lofts. Who coughed on the 6th floor of Harlem, crowned with flame under the tubercular sky, surrounded by orange crates of theology.
Who scribbled all night, rocking and rolling over lofty incantations, which in the yellow morning were stanzas of gibberish. Who cooked rotten animals, lung, heart, feet, tail, borscht, and tortillas, dreaming of the pure vegetable kingdom, who plunged themselves under meat trucks looking for an egg, who threw their watches off the roof to cast their ballot for eternity outside of time, and alarm clocks fell on their heads every day for the next decade, who cut their wrists 3 times successfully, unsuccessfully, gave up and were forced to open antique stores where they thought they were growing old and cried.
Who were burned alive in their innocent flannel suits on Madison Avenue amid blasts of leaden verse and the tanked-up clatter of the iron regiments of fashion and the nitroglycerin shrieks of the fairies of advertising and the mustard gas of sinister intelligent editors who were run down by drunken taxicabs of absolute reality, who jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, this actually happened, and walked away unknown and forgotten into the ghostly days of Chinatown soup alleyways and fire trucks. Not even one free beer, who sang out of their windows in despair, fell out of the subway window, jumped in the filthy Passaic, leaped on Negroes, cried all over the street, danced on broken wine glasses, barefoot, smashed phonograph records of nostalgic European 1930s German jazz, finished the whiskey and threw up groaning into the bloody toilet, moans in their ears, and the blast of colossal steam whistles.
Som brände av ett raggarstråk genom Golgata och tillsammans bräkte på i det förflutnas autostrador. Djupt ensamhet i fängelser, jazzens inkarnation i Birmingham.
Who barreled down the highways of the past, journeying to each other's hot rod Golgotha jail solitude watch or Birmingham jazz incarnation.
Som korsade kontinentens på 72 timmar för att komma på om jag hade en vision. Om du hade en vision för att komma underfund med evigheten.
Who drove cross country 72 hours to find out if I had a vision or you had a vision or he had a vision to find out eternity.
Som reste till Denver, dog i Denver, kom tillbaka till Denver och förgäves väntade, som bevakade Denver och strövade och nosade i Denver och till slut stack för att finna på tiden. Och nu är Denver platsen som verkar av ensamhet efter sina hjältar.
Who journeyed to Denver, who died in Denver, who came back to Denver and waited in vain. Who watched over Denver and brewed in Denver and loaned in Denver and finally went away to find out the time. And now Denver is lonesome for her heroes.
Som föll på knä i hopplösa katedraler i bön för varandras frälsning, ljus och bröst, tills själens betydelse att yttersta hår en kort sekund.
Who fell on their knees in hopeless cathedrals, praying for each other's salvation and light and breasts until the soul illuminated its hair for a second.
Som i fängelse kraschade genom själens golv i väntan på den omöjlige förbrytarens gyllene huvud och förtrollad av verkligheten, sjungande i hjärtats ljuv blues för Alcatraz.
Who crashed through their minds in jail, waiting for the impossible criminals with golden heads and the charm of reality in their hearts, who sang sweet blues to Alcatraz.
Som drog sig undan till Mexiko för att odla en vana, eller till Klippebergen och Buddha, Nordafrika och gossar, eller till Svarta lokomotivets södra Stilla havet, eller Harvard Narcissus, eller Woodlawns tusensköna graven.
Who retired to Mexico to cultivate a habit, or Rocky Mount to tender Buddha, or Tangiers to Boys, or Southern Pacific to the Black Locomotive, or Harvard to Narcissus, to Woodlawn, and the Daisy Chain, or Grave.
Som i den mentala hälsans namn krävde rättegång mot radions hypnos och lämnades mentalt störda med sina händer och en jury som inte kom till något beslut.
Who demanded sanity trials accusing the radio of hypnotism, and were left with their insanity and their hands and
instead the concrete void of insulin, metrazole, electricity, hydrotherapy, psychotherapy, occupational therapy, ping pong, and amnesia, who in humorless protest overturned only one symbolic ping pong table resting briefly in Catalonia. Returning years later, truly bald, except for a wig of blood and tears and fingers to the visible madman, doom of the wards of the mad towns of the East. Pilgrim states, rocklands and grey stones, fetid halls, bickering with the echoes of the soul, rocking and rolling in the midnight solitude, bench, dolmen, realms of love, dreams of life in nightmares.